Hello, welcome to another video. So I'm gonna be doing this a bit differently. This is gonna be about Azara, the Lord of the Seven Sins. I've got I guess you can call it a script here. You can read along or put this in your background if you'd like. I will also be saying other things which aren't a part of the script. And let's begin. Today we are going to be doing part 1 of a long story about the Lord of the Seven Sins, Azra. He is one of the oldest gods out there and has a long history behind him. From the days of conquest to his gluttonous and greedy phases, Azra's mind often switches between the seven sins frequently. So, how did Azra go from a conqueror god to a lazy and bloated god to a conqueror god and much more? This will be part 1. So this is the Azure series I'll be working on. Now I'm going to be doing other series as well. I'm planning to do one about Velicus Octavia, the Lord of Ambition, King of Overseers. He's got those titles and he's a very important character. But let's begin with Azure. So his origin story starts all the way back around 70 to 50,000 of the First Era. This is when Azor was born. His father, Azgara, was a warrior, servant of the then Lord of Destruction and Death, Atamuku. His mother, Yavanna, was enslaved by Atamuku and forced to marry Asgara. Azor was born with three siblings, his two sisters, Ivana and Terakuna, and his brother, Mazgovin. Azra grew up being trained to be a hardened warrior. His father taught him many battle techniques and shaped him into becoming a warrior. Azra admired his father for the first years of his life. His father felt the same, as Azra managed to beat him only after a month's worth of training. He was 12 at the time. After a year of fighting, Azra was able to go toe-to-toe with almost any warrior. So, that's the first paragraph I wrote. So when I say that he could fight any warrior, I really don't mean it. But that's how he felt. He felt like he could conquer any warrior after years worth of training. This is how fast he was training. Within only a month, he was able to beat his dad, and then he was able to do it consistently. Now, also the story about women being forcefully married into homes was very common for the time. And so there's this whole mentality that the men have, what is known as a conqueror's prize or a warrior's prize. Gold, it could be like money, gold, or power. Status, so like how others think of you, respect, etc. And women. And you already know what that means. It was at this point in which he made contact with someone only known as the Serpent Scalasus. Scalasus means colossal, giant. The Serpent Scalasus told Azra his power was pathetic to a true warrior, and that if he followed him, the Serpent Scalasus would teach him true power. Azra felt insulted, and so he went for the attack. The Serpent Scalasus managed to beat Azra easily before taking him, basically kidnapping him. The Serpent Scalasus then forced Azra to train with him for several years, where Azra trained at his true potential. So the Serpent Scalasus is basically this huge, like, snake warrior thing that basically finds Azra and trains him to be a warrior. Originally, the Serpent Scalasus was just going to eat him. However, after seeing his high level of power, he decided to train him instead. One important thing to note is that Azor never learned how to control his own emotions. Thus, he always used force whenever he wanted something. So this is going to be an important part of his life because he doesn't know how to get things he wants. He doesn't know how to ask. He doesn't really know how to talk people and stuff. He always uses force. Whenever he wants something, he's going to get what he wants, usually by forcing people to do his will. And this is a very common thing in his life. So, after the Serpent Scalasus kidnapped Azura, Azara went on a search hunt trying to find his son. The hunt lasted around 10 years before he finally found Azara. At the time, Azara had become very powerful, and soon he was taken back home. And so soon after he was taken back home, he challenged his father to a duel. Azara easily won the duel, killing his father in the process. He did this because, as he trained, he felt that his father had tried to keep him weak. He then went on the kill to kill the rest of his instant family, as he felt that they were too weak to survive in the world, especially his sisters and mothers, who experienced his worst wrath. So the reason why he did this was because that the serpent Scalasus had basically trained him to be much powerful, and he believed that his father withheld a lot of his power and lied to Azra about his strength. You see, the Serpent Scholar says one of the things he taught Azra is the warrior's mentality, which I'll call it. Basically put, the powerful are meant to dominate over the weak. It's either the weak have to die or the weak have to be subjugated and work for the strong. And so this is what Azra is implemented in his mind, and Asgore actually does try to teach him the same mentality, but at this point it fails because Azor now thinks of his father as part of the weak, trying to pretend to be strong than the actual strong. So this is why he challenges his father to a duel and wins, and he kills him afterwards. Oswald felt true power after the death of his family, and that he could no longer be held back. In order to further his own power, he found out about the book of Nelsuka, which contained information about fighting styles and powerful magic. It was also said to give a reader a surge of power, though at the cost of one's innocence. Since Azra had already lost his innocence, there was really no downside to reading the book. An important thing is the reason why Azura felt so much power from his family is because, well, the warrior is often, well, controlled by his family. The warrior fights for his family first, he provides for his family, he does all that, and by basically killing his family, he doesn't restrict himself in his eyes. You gotta see this from his point of view. His family is weak to his eyes compared to him, and he hates this. So he doesn't want to be controlled. He doesn't want to provide. He doesn't want to do this stuff for a weak family. So instead of doing what a normal warrior would do and providing for them, he kills them so that he basically lets go of the chain of what he thinks is a chain in like enslaving him to force him to work for people that are weaker than him. So he feels that. And also, he doesn't want to provide anyone with anything. He believes that he needs to be provided for. His father, especially taught this in his early youth as he was very spoiled. And so, this is very much a part of his early life is that he won't provide anything to anyone unless someone provides double to him, is what I'd say. He searched for the book for around 50 years. So, in terms of God stuff, this really isn't that long. Gods can do certain things for a long period of time. In fact, some gods will go to sleep for hundreds of years. So, in terms of God history, this really isn't that long. During that time, he grew even stronger and had faced numerous enemies. One enemy was Sardracus, a magic-born warrior originating from a realm known as Nithorn. He barely defeated the magic-born, which embarrassed him. The reason why this embarrassed him was because he didn't believe that people um weren't, as capable as like a warrior himself. And when I say people, people can come in all forms of different shapes and sizes. There are many different races. So, like in my fantasy universe, there's like 18 races as of right now on known, but there's many more. There are these things called ancient races. There's like these races that gods will create and that have gone extinct. That's just how it is. So people can come in a variety of different shapes. Well, not shapes, but in different sizes. And so I just thought I'd let you know. They're not humans. They're not, all that other stuff. Just to clarify. He soon realized that one of his enemies, Sifon, a poet from which Azra had wanted dead, as Azra saw him as a threat due to his ability to know the truth and his connection with many gods, had been making fun of him and telling others how pathetic he was. So basically put, this poet was able to use his magic to learn the truth through Azra's mind, and Azra felt that this was a threat because he really didn't want somebody who knew about his stuff to go around telling lies and making fun of him, which is what he was doing. This enraged Azra, who found him and killed him. However, in killing him, he was soon caught and tortured for 200 years. That might seem like a lot, and it is, but in terms of God history, this is kind of not too much. During these 200 years, he was meant to serve eternal damnation as he had killed Niflheim, the lord of bravery, combat, and warriorship's favorite poet. The realm gets its name from the god. However, after 200 years, Azur had enough. He used the rage and power that he had built to break out of his chains and kill the guards before escaping. So, afterwards, he went back to searching for the Book of Nausuka. He realized that it was in a village kept secret from everyone. After failing to steal it, he raised an army of 500 mercenaries and burnt the city to the ground. After over 200 years, he had found the book. Now, I really have nothing to say, so let's continue. Afterwards, he would go on to kill the 500 mercenaries one by one and take control of their bodies and souls, giving him a permanent army of 500 soldiers. He grew his army by taking control of the bodies of dead people and then their souls if he could. If he couldn't, he would capture souls and have them fight for him. So this becomes a theme. His army is, you could think of it like an undead army, but don't think of them as skeletons or zombies or whatever. They're just like humans or whatever. All he does is he takes these dead people and brings them back to life with their life characters. So they still have their skin, their fur, their scales, or whatever else they have on them. And they still have their characteristics. It's just now that their souls are pledged to Azura, which is a thing that powerful beings can do, in which Azura himself learned from the serpent Scolasus. Scolasus, I think. One or the other. So the book gave him a lot of power. So the book, the book of, let me look again. The book of Nelsuka? Yeah, Nelsuka. Was one of the most powerful books. And Azura had learned about this from once. Wait. Anyway, I don't know what else. I kind of lost track. So yeah, the book gave him a lot of power, and this eventually gave him enough to challenge Niflheim. Now he wanted to challenge Niflheim because he felt he had been humiliated by the god. He felt that the god humiliated him and he wanted revenge. He also felt that he was kind of treated as a weak person, which he absolutely hated. So now this was his time to prove that he was strong in his mind. There would be 3 duels. The first 2 were utter humiliations. Niflheim beat him 2 times in a row. He could have killed him, but he decided not to because he felt that shame was more painful than death. Thus, in the third one, Azura decided to cheat. As the two engaged in a duel, he subsequently used magic to distract him before stabbing the lord in the head. This was a dishonorable act, and so a mob of thousands of people attacked him. Luckily for him, his soldiers came to the rescue, now numbering 10,000, and slaughtered the village before he went on to loot and burn the entire city of Nevath to the ground, notably stealing the Bow of the Sea. The Bow of the Sea belonged to a long line of successors and eventually ended up in the hands of Nifon through his father. However, the bow would not last longer, as Azar destroyed it and took all of its magical power, which he typically did with most magical objects, especially ones that couldn't really benefit him. So, about the act of using magic in a duel, this is considered a dishonorable act because a duel is typically seen as a fight on fight with a physical fight. Magical stuff isn't to be used unless in like the duel both participants agree to use magic. So let's say like a wizard's duel or whatever, that's when you'd see magic, or a mage's duel where all options are on the table. However, in most duels it's supposed to be like a man on man, sword on sword kind of thing. You're not supposed to use magic in a duel, and never mind, you're not supposed to try to instantly kill your opponent as well. You're supposed to um try to like disarm him or disembowel him or try to injure him enough to where he surrenders, or until he requests his death, or until the audience requests his death. There's a variety of rules to fighting duels, gladiatorial combat, but he violated kind of several, like, I wouldn't call them laws, but like unwritten rules about the duels. So after this, Oswald would spend his time to grow his power by raising his army and killing his rivals. However, he had greater ambitions. Nifon was the emperor of Eogoth, which had crumbled after his death. Now he sought to conquer and re-establish Eogoth, with himself as emperor due to the right of conquest. So he started. So why would he want to re-establish an empire ruled by his enemy? Because he wanted to be established as a dominator. He wanted to basically be known as a conqueror, that he managed to kill and then raise an army and invade and eventually become the emperor of Eogoth through the right of conquest. So this is why he decided he wanted to attack. So he began by marching an army of 30,000 men against the cities of Nazwa and Tubal-Camen. Both cities resisted. However, after a hard-fought battle, both cities were captured and burnt to the ground. This is a pretty common thing with Azra and many shaitans and many empires of this world. Then Azra moved north and fought where the confederation of the six kingdoms of Ivar was, and he won the battle of Moleskit. Afterwards, he marched on the capital, Hagi, which was plundered, but it was allowed to stay. This means that it was looted and there was some burning involved, but the city remained intact overall. Then he moved his armies westward, and after 20 years of skirmishes and marching his armies around, securing his realm, he eventually declared himself the Emperor of Eogoth. Despite this, his rule was heavily challenged. There would be numerous rebellions across his kingdom, as Azor was a usurper, and this was very common. But Azor's superior army, which now numbered 100,000 soldiers at this point, was able to put down these revolts. And then, for the next couple 10,000 years, he settled down. So basically put, now he's went from a powerful warrior into a powerful conqueror. So this was a massive prestige boost for him. Now, in his eyes, there was only one world, and this world was where the empire of Eogoth was. He believed he had conquered the world, so basically put, he now basically is the emperor of the world. So he does a bit of like tongue twisting and changes the term of Eogoth. No longer is it like a province, a continent. It's the world. So him being the emperor of Eogoth is him being the emperor of the world. That's why he changes the name of the realm from Nifon to Eogoth. to basically tell everyone that he's the conqueror of a world. The world. So, at this time, Azara stopped being a warrior. He believed that he had conquered the world and so there was no need to fight. And so he didn't. He used his wealth from all the conquests and lootings and spent it on all sorts of things: drink, food, women, etc., etc. He began to eat a lot. He ate a lot of sheep, an animal called mukas, which is basically a cow with sheep's wool and which is much larger, and even squid-like creatures from the rivers known as aquava. His banquets served him all sorts of breads and all sorts of meat. He often had traders hand him meats like ribs, steak, gook, chopped cow liver served in bread, and much, much more. It got to a point where he started to eat tens of thousands of calories per day. And with this, it got to a point where he began to gain a lot of weight. Never mind the amount of basically money and the complications with having to have these insane amounts of foods and other things delivered, the amount of, well, let's say like the limited amount of money he would have to spend, or just the amount. It's so complicated that he was even able to do something like this. So he became very fat at the same time, which was even more expensive. So Azura was very, very big, but he was muscular due to his constant activities. However, with the decline of his activities and the beginning of his mass eating habits, his muscles turned into fat. It got so bad that Azura would break his bed regularly and would eventually end up having to sleep on multiple beds or even on the floor. Azra would often rant about nonsensical things, such as basically how he demands total respect of like everyone and how everyone will care about him and people that don't aren't like people. He talked about all sorts of crazy things. And even minor inconveniences could be seen as traitorous and could have people killed. He often replaced these people, such as servants, concubines, wives, and advisors, with new people and monster type races, which were often forced into serving him through force. Remember, Azra usually gets his things through force, so if he can't pay you, he's gonna force you. Now, this is also one of the reasons why it's so complicated with his whole eating habits, because he often has to force people to give him food, like taxes or whatever. And this also creates a lot of rebellions as well. Luckily for Azura, his army is able to put these down, but it just gets very complicated after a while. And his, what do I want to call it? The people under him were working very hard to keep up Azura's habits. He demanded total respect and total obedience, which he often felt was not being fulfilled. Thus, the people living under his rule had lived under fear and oppression. Hundreds of thousands, if not well over millions, would be killed, and the rest would have to watch themselves. But by 40,000 of the first era, he had complete control over his empire. Basically put, by this point, he had fully solidified his rule. So, like, there was not a lot of opposition and things were semi peaceful. However, in 35,000 of the First Era, he found a new foe, one which he would attack ruthlessly, and one whose conquest he committed against would make him famous. When part 2 arrives, I'll talk about Azra's wars against the Chitin and further character development. We have seen how Azra has grown from a curious and quick learning boy into an arrogant but powerful warrior and into a gluttonous, self entitled, lazy king. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you that spends a small part of your time to watch these videos fully. If you would like to, please subscribe and leave a comment down below. If you would like to see me do a series on one of these characters, make sure to let me know. I don't have any plans right now, but if you would like to see that, then make sure to let me know. Whether it be Nephorn, the Serpent Scalasus, or maybe even his dad. Um, so yeah, I would really appreciate that. Check out my community posts. I try to make them, but sometimes I don't. I really got to start working on that. Anyway, hope each and every one of you has a good day or night, and I'll see you all another time.